Hello, welcome back. I'm Savalian, and today we're going to do a review. I wasn't planning on doing another review so soon, but I recently picked up the Silhouette Portrait 3, and I figured if I have it and I'm using it, I might as well talk about it, right? So first, a couple of background pieces of information about why I picked this up. Basically, about a year ago, I think almost exactly a year ago. I could be wrong on the timing on that, but I opened up a sticker shop, and for a lot of very valid reasons that honestly are still valid today, I went with print on demand as my fulfillment option. So instead of either ordering stickers in bulk and then shipping them myself or printing them at home and shipping them myself, I let that be handled by a print-on-demand service. I've been using Printify, and all in all, still a really good service. I have a review on Printify and the other services that I reviewed, and all of the things that I said in those reviews are still valid. But fast forward to now, and I'm finding that it's very, very tricky to price my products competitively, specifically for like a beginner shop. So I don't have an audience. I don't have people who want to buy my stickers already. I have a couple of friends, and I'm very grateful that they have decided to, patronize my sticker shop. But as for reach, finding new customers, finding new people who are interested in my shop, I haven't been able to do that. And I think a combination of having it on my personal website instead of a marketplace like Etsy, and also just the prices that I have to cover the costs of printing the stickers, makes it very difficult to grow the shop or really make very many sales at all. And this is mainly for stickers and prints, things that you can easily print at home for very cheap, things like t-shirts, mugs. Anything that needs to be like physically manufactured is probably still best done print on demand. I don't have a lot of products like that in my shop, but if I do, I'll almost certainly leave those as print on demand. And then there are also some things that I have wanted to do with my sticker sheets that I haven't been able to do with any of the services that I was able to find. The biggest one being control over where the cuts are happening, because my goal is to make stickers for journaling, for planners, paper typically, not like decorative vinyl stickers that you put on a water bottle or a laptop. And so the different materials have different capabilities, and I wasn't really able to have any control over that with using print on demand. But I'm going to talk more about the specifics of like my shop results. It's not done. I'm relaunching it, but I'm going to be talking about what I'm changing specifically and why, and like how much this new process is going to cost compared to the old one. But I'll do that all in its own video, which should be happening soon. Currently, the plan is to relaunch in 2 weeks. So we'll see. Maybe I can move the timeline up a little bit if I can get the materials I need early. But if you'd like to see that video, make sure to subscribe, and hopefully it'll come up for you on YouTube when it's out. But we're going to go through the whole process of unboxing, setting up the sticker machine, and then actually doing a sticker print. So this is kind of like an all-in-one, from receiving the Silhouette Portrait 3 to actually having a sticker sheet cut perfectly to hold in my hands. So we're going to start with the unboxing. The unboxing itself was nothing crazy. There's not a lot in the box because the machine doesn't have a lot of like parts or accessories. It really was just the machine. The mat, the cutting mat, is kind of draped over it. The blade is separate in a little baggie, so make sure you don't lose that. You'll have to drop it in the slot when you're ready to start cutting. And then just some instructions, the power cord, things like that. But all in all, unboxing was pretty bare bones. Everything you need is right there. Also, I will mention, for anyone who doesn't know, the Silhouette Portrait 3 is not a printer. It is just a cutting machine. So if you want to make stickers or anything else with a design on them, instead of just cutting out material, you will need a printer separately from the Silhouette Portrait 3. So when I started, I used just our home office printer, some kind of HP printer that we got for fairly cheap. And then after seeing that the quality of the prints were just not exactly where I wanted, they were pretty good, but not exactly where I wanted, I did decide to get a Epson Eco Tank 8500, I think is the number on it. It's a specifically an art printer, so it has a little bit higher print resolution, and it's just sort of designed for this sort of thing instead of the home office printer, which is not. So in addition to having the Silhouette Portrait 3, to make stickers you will need the printer, and you will also need sticker paper, which you can buy at office supply stores, you can get it on Amazon. Those are the two things that you will need to make stickers in addition to the Portrait 3. The machine itself is very light, which I was kind of surprised by. The reviews I watched did say it was a pretty small machine, but it was just easy to lift, easy to move around. And one important thing that I don't believe was mentioned in any of the instructions is that you do need some space behind the machine. And the way that it works is once you put the cutting mat in, it will move the whole mat back and forth through the machine, and then it will move the blade side to side. So you need, like most of a paper's length behind the machine for it to go through it without getting all bunched up. But these are some things to look out for when you're thinking of where to put your machine. Another thing is that it does need to be fairly well lit in order for the sensors to see the markings on the paper that tell it where it's sort of located. So you can't just chuck it in a dark closet. You do need some light, but this room is not super bright, and it's worked fine for me. So you don't need to like shine a spotlight on it. Just make sure you're in a room with a normal amount of light in it. And once you set it up on a shelf, you can lift the little door in the front, and when it ships with these little pieces of tape and some styrofoam to like keep the blade from getting jostled, I assume. And the first time I turned it on, I had missed a little piece of styrofoam, and it got kind of stuck and was like shaking around, and it made this horrible noise. So make sure you get all the styrofoam. There's at least one little piece on the side in there, and then a couple pieces of tape. You want to make sure you get all of that out before you plug it in and turn it on. But plugging it in is fairly straightforward. There's one plug that the power cord fits into. It's in the back, on kind of the side a little bit. And then once you get it plugged in and turned on, you're ready to move over to the software portion of the setup and start formatting a design to send to the machine. So the next step is to install the Silhouette software, Silhouette Studio. There might be a driver or something. The instructions with the machine will tell you exactly where to get them, but you can go to Silhouette's website, search for the Portrait 3, and once you get that software installed, we're going to move on to the next step. Once you have Silhouette Studio installed, you are confronted with a sort of blank canvas area, and you can adjust your page settings to match the mat you're using and the paper or other material that you're using. I believe these were right by default for me. The Portrait 3 mat is selected here, and then in the paper settings or the material settings, I have letter size, paper. Also in the page settings, there's a tab along the top, and this is how you turn on the registration marks. I would turn these on. I actually don't know how to start cuts without these. I don't know why they're off by default. The registration marks are how your cutting machine knows where it is on the paper, and it's actually very important because if it can't read these markings, it can't cut accurately and may not cut at all. Also, I want to mention I watched a tutorial that recommended making the registration lines smaller, but after going through this process and trying it out myself, I would really suggest leaving them how they are. The reason for this is because the machine has a certain area it looks to find these markings automatically. If it can't find them, which happened to me when I made the area smaller, you have to press some buttons and like manually adjust the position to show the machine where it is, and you have to do that every time you want to cut a design. So unless you really need every single millimeter of your paper, I would leave the registration marks at the default settings. Now from here you can add your designs by opening them from the file menu. If you have a PNG file with the transparent background, by default Silhouette Studio will detect the edges automatically and add cut lines for you. Once you pull your image in, you'll be able to see little red lines around the edges of the image. And also, instead of putting the images into the file you have open, it puts them in a new file. You can just click on the image to select it and then Control-C to copy it, go back to your file, and Control-V to paste it in. If you don't have a design with a transparent background, you can also use the trace option to find the edges. It looks like kind of a stamp icon. I don't know what the icon's supposed to be, but if you click that, you can drag to select the trace area and then adjust the threshold until the things you want to cut out are yellow. Then you can click Trace Outer Edge and it will add those cut lines for you. And I'll mention here, if you have very light designs or if you have a design with white around the edge of it, it doesn't really work very well to trace. So you'll have to either add lines manually, which I have never done and it sounds kind of awful, or you can just use a transparent ping and use the import option, because that seems to be pretty reliable even with white edges because it uses transparency instead of color. And I'm not going to show you everything you can do with Silhouette Studio, mostly because I don't know how to do everything with Silhouette Studio, but I will show you how I go through setting up a full page of sticker sheets with both die cuts and kiss cuts. And to make the automatic import work better, I have split my sheet designs into two files. The first file is a transparent ping of just the sticker designs. So all of the things on this image are things that are going to be getting kiss cuts around them. And I will often put a small white border on the individual designs in my image editing program instead of trying to do that in Silhouette Studio, just because I find it much easier to work with. But I will show you how to use the offset tool, which is how you would get an outline that's not exactly up against your image, but a little bit away to give it some space. And the reason that these little borders are important is that the silhouette is pretty precise, but it is not pixel perfect. Having this additional spacing gives you a little bit of leeway if the cuts are just slightly misaligned from your print. You know, it doesn't cut off pieces of the design if it's like 1 millimeter off onto the side. So to do these offsets, you select the cut lines that it added automatically by double clicking on the line until it goes into this mode where all the points of the line are shown. Then you know the line is selected. And then the offset tool is this tool with the star icon. You can click offset, and then for a lot of my stickers I find that like 0.04 is about a good distance. It's very small, but it's enough to give it that margin that I want. And also, if you don't have a line to select, if you just select the image, it is going to select the square boundaries of the image. So if you want to do this and you're not using the auto cutout, you will need to do a trace first, get a line from the trace, and then select that line. Now the offset does add an additional line if you start with the auto cut, or even if you start with a trace cut. It doesn't move the existing line, it just adds a new one. But if you don't want to cut that original line out, you could try to delete it. I've had some trouble selecting the lines that are attached to the images. It sometimes just deletes the image, and I'm not sure how to select the right thing. So the easier thing for me to do is just select the line and change the color to something else. I set up all my cut settings by line color, and we'll do that in a minute. But if I want a different kind of cut, or to not cut a particular line, I could just select the line, go into the line settings, which has, you know, a line icon on it, and then change the color to something else. Now the second file I use is for the background of the sheet. You can, of course, cut the sheets apart yourself. I prefer to let the silhouette do it for me, and then I can also add rounded edges and other sort of decorative elements if I want to. So my background design is really just a rounded rectangle that is the size of the sticker sheets. I'll put some text on here to label what kind of sticker sheet it is. I also toyed with adding decorative elements or even a background color printed right on the paper. In the end, I felt like a solid background color was a bit wasteful for ink, and in general, I'd rather have the space to fit more sticker designs instead of using that space just to make it look cute. So my sticker sheet is very minimal, but adding this file will add that automatic cut around the sheet, and I'm going to use this cut for my die cut. So that's the next step, which is separating the kiss cut lines from the die cut lines. Die cuts go all the way through the paper, and they separate the sheets from each other because I can fit multiple sticker sheets on this one page. And then the kiss cuts only go through the sticker designs, and they don't go all the way through the paper, which is what lets you peel the sticker off of the sheet without completely separating it. So I'm going to select the line around the whole sheet, and I'm going to change that to a different color. Usually the colors I use are red and blue just because they're easy for me to see and tell which one is which. So I have the blue on that one big line around the whole sheet. I have the red around the individual designs. And now, once this is all good, I can line these up together and combine them so that they are printed and cut out together. So I use the alignment options in the menu to put each design into the center of the page so I know that they're lined up exactly. If your backing design is in the front covering up your individual designs, you can right click and click send to back so that it's behind the sticker designs like you want. Once they're lined up and they are the same size and they look correct, I drag to select both of them together, I right click and group. And now when I select it, it will select both of them and they will move together. Depending on the size of your sticker sheets, you could potentially put multiple sheets on one page, and I would recommend setting this up so that you're not wasting paper, just for the sake of not being wasteful and for being as efficient as possible. You want to make sure you're not just throwing out a quarter of each page that you print on. So I've set these up so that they are just the right size to fit 4 of them, and then there's just a little bit of wasted paper around the edges and between them. And to set this up with all 4, I start by putting this one at the top left, making sure not to put it too close to the registration markings so the machine will be able to read those, and also so they won't be printed onto the part where the sticker is going to be. And Silhouette Studio has some duplication options under this menu with a weird asterisk kind of icon. And if you have little designs, you want to repeat them a lot across a page, you can use this to do that. I've noticed it's kind of weird sometimes. I clicked fill page and it didn't fill the page, it just put 2. I'm not sure why that was. Personally, I prefer to just lay these out myself. And I also prefer to space them so they're not completely lining up exactly. And this is because I tried that once and the lines were just a little bit off and it created these slightly jagged edges. But I have seen other people, double up on the lines and they were happy with theirs. So it's possible that I did something else wrong, and that's a fine strategy. But either way, I'm not saving any paper by putting these all exactly edge to edge, because I can only fit 4 on here anyway. Once you have all that set up, congratulations, you've done most of the work. Don't forget to save your file if this is something you will want to print out again, like a product for your shop or something you want to come back to later. Now, the options for cut settings are in the Send tab, and I find the easiest way to set these up are from the Line menu. If you haven't connected the Silhouette to your computer with the cord, you can also connect with Bluetooth. But before we continue, you want to make sure it's connected somehow. So either plug it in via USB to your computer or turn on the Bluetooth and use your computer's Bluetooth menu to find it and connect. Once that's done, it may take a moment to see it once you've connected, but you should be able to either see it come up in the bottom section of the send page, and if you don't see it, there's another little button just to the left of the send button that will let you pick if you have multiple machines or if you've previously connected it via USB. You should see the options in there, and hopefully you have something connected and it either says load media or ready in this bottom section, and it should also show you the details of the cut settings. So what you should see in the send sidebar here is all the different colors of lines are listed along the top, and if you have any lines here that you don't want to cut out, like the one that's automatically placed, you can uncheck them here. All the lines that it's going to cut out will show up bold, so you should be able to see them very clearly in the preview. Now for me, I have the red line that I want to do kiss cuts for, and the blue line that I want to do die cuts for. If you click on the material part of each of these rows, it will give you a list of pre-made options for different cuts, and I didn't see anything that looked exactly like what I wanted. As far as I know, there's no default kiss cut options in here, so I searched the internet for what good settings would be, and I found a whole table of settings for different online labels sticker papers. It has all different kinds of materials and like surfaces, and I used the one for their white matte sticker paper, and it actually just worked. It worked first try, which was really impressive. I did have another transparent vinyl paper later that I had to repeatedly try new settings, and eventually I did get something that worked. But starting from someone else's settings of a similar material is a good idea if you can find it. But basically you can click into the materials menu, click new material at the bottom, and then you can adjust the settings at the bottom of the send menu. There's a few different options. There's the blade option, which I believe is the depth of the blade for the auto blade, which is what the Portrait 3 comes with. I think a common setting is 2, and then for thicker, more dense vinyl, I had to use 3. The force is how hard to cut. So typically for a full cut through the paper, it's something like 15 to 30. And then for kiss cuts, it's really not very much force at all. So like the white sticker paper was 2. I believe for the vinyl I used a 7, if I remember right. But it does depend on the material. And then the speed option was not mentioned on that table I found, so I usually just left this around 4 or 5, which was the default for some of the pre-made options. I'm not sure if you're gonna have some really wild results if you change this. So my setting for kiss cuts on the white matte sticker paper was blade 2, force 2, and 1 pass. And then for the die cut, according to that online labels table I found, it's blade setting 2, force 16, and 2 passes. And if you have a different paper or a different material and this doesn't work on the first try, or if you're trying to set up a new material that you've never used before, typically what I do is I try adjusting the force first. For example, cuts all the way through on a kiss cut, I will lower the force. If it doesn't cut enough and I can't separate the stickers, or if the die cuts don't go all the way through, I will increase the force. And if I do a couple of adjustments to the force and it's still not enough, I'll try changing the blade depth. I don't have a ton of experience with this, but I was able to hone in on a good setting for the transparent vinyl within like 3 or 4 tries. And I also know that once you get your cut settings right for a particular paper, you should be good to reuse those for a while, but at some point the blade will start to dull. I don't know how long it takes for this to happen, but at that point you may either need to increase the force or just replace the blade so that it's new and sharp. So I'm not really experienced with that part of the process, but that's what you're gonna have to do. Once your design is set up in Silhouette Studio, you are ready to start producing sticker sheets. First thing you need to do is print it, but you'll want to use Silhouette Studio and print your design from there so that you have everything configured just in the right place, and also so that it has the registration lines printed out. And before you actually hit print, you will want to go into your printer settings and make sure that the paper and quality settings are configured. So by default, a lot of printers will have just plain letter paper chosen. For the matte sticker paper, I chose the option that was matte specialty paper. And then for the glossy vinyl, I chose glossy specialty paper. Your specific options will be different based on your printer, but there also may be an option within the print settings to select high quality instead of a standard quality. And then I also had a checkbox on one that allowed me to do a high resolution print. So most printers for the home office are set up to be quick and easy. They're not really designed to print art, they're designed to print out like receipts and shipping labels and recipes. So they're designed to be fast and not super high quality. So you'll want to make sure you go in and at least double check these settings when you print out your stickers. I've also seen that the high quality print option is not necessary for every kind of material. For paper, because paper is more porous, it may make the pages look a little fuzzy because it uses more ink and it tends to bleed on the page. But personally, I think it looks okay for mine. Maybe not necessary, but it works okay. And then I've also noticed that the high quality print worked better on transparent vinyl. It just gave it a little bit more of a deep color and a little bit more crisp design. So try it out both ways if you'd like to, or if you try high quality and it doesn't look exactly how you want, you may try moving back down to standard. But the important thing is to know that these settings are there and that they can impact what the prints look like. Also, very important, make sure the paper is facing the right way in the printer. For my printer, the front of the sticker paper needs to be loaded in so it's facing down in the tray. Check your manual so you don't accidentally mess this up. I messed up a couple of papers putting them in the wrong way, and then it would print on the back of the sticker paper, which does not work. So make sure you're loading the paper in the correct way. And then if you have any like glossy or slippery paper, you will probably want to load the pages in one at a time, because otherwise it can cause your printer to jam because it has a hard time sort of gripping that slippery paper. A little annoying, but I feel like it's better to do things the slow way than risk having to spend an afternoon fixing a jammed printer. Once you have printed your designs onto the paper, it's time to attach it to the mat. Well, first make sure the ink is dry. If you're using a glossy paper, you may need to let it sit for several minutes to fully dry, and then load it onto the cutting mat so that you can feed it into the Silhouette machine. This is pretty precise work. If you're even a little bit off, it can throw off the accuracy of the cuts. So go slowly when you attach the paper to the mat, and make sure it's as straight as possible. And you'll also want to hold on to the sheet that comes with the mat so that you can cover it back up when it's not in use and avoid getting extra like hairs and dust and stuff stuck to that sticky surface, because you want to keep it sticky enough to hold your pages for as long as possible so you don't have to replace it. And when you're adding the sheet to the cutting mat, you want to line up the letter size paper with the letter size markings. There's a couple of different markings, and get it as straight as possible. And once you start sticking the paper to the mat, it's going to be a little bit difficult to remove. Not impossible, of course, because that's, you have to get the stickers off somehow, but it's kind of annoying. So I usually start by just lining up the very top edge of the sheet, pressing it down just a little bit And one thing I'll do is I'll hold the mat up to the light from the back, because the mat itself is transparent, so you can see exactly where the paper comes up from the back side of it. Once that top part is lined up as well as I can, I just slowly, slide my hand down the mat and stick the rest of it onto the sheet. And then with the sheet on the cutting mat, you can load it into the machine. The instructions that came with it for this were basically useless. It told me to line up the edge of the mat with, quote, the gray line, but there is no gray line on my machine. I don't know what it's referring to. All of these little raised lines are the same color as the machine. They're all white. They're not gray. But after watching other people set theirs up, I found that the line you're supposed to line it up with is the second one from the left, which is the leftmost line in the little set of 3. I don't know why they didn't just label these, but that's where you line it up. I do mine so that the edge of the mat is touching the edge of the raised line. That seems to work for me, but really they could have made this a lot easier. Once you have the mat lined up, make sure it's pressed kind of flush with the machine, and then you press the arrow up button on the machine and it will kind of slurp the mat up, and then you can let it go. It'll just hang there. And if you need to get the mat back out again, either now or when it's done cutting, you just press the down button and it will spit it back out. With the cutting mat loaded in, double check that your file is ready. All your settings should be good to go from what we did earlier, and then you can click send to start the cut. And what the machine does first is pan around the page and scan in all those registration markings, and if it's successful, it will start cutting. If it's not successful, maybe because you tried to make the registration area smaller, it may report a failure in that little tiny bottom section in Silhouette Studio. And the first thing you should check is that your room has adequate lighting. It needs light to see the markings. And if you do have enough light and it's still not working, you can try manually lining up the sensor. So in the little menu with the machine, there's this little group of arrows. If you click and hold these arrows, it will move the sensor on the machine. And so you want to move it until the little box is right over that top left square. And then you can click, once it's failed, it will give you the option to manually register, and that's what you do. You click manual register after you move it. Sometimes it takes a few tries to get it lined up right, but every time I did have that initial failure, I was able to manually register. And after that, after all of that, I just decided not to bother changing the registration lines. Just leave them where they are. It's not worth the hassle. Once the machine has scanned all those registration lines, it will click a few times to adjust the blade settings, and it will start cutting. It does the line cuts in the order that they are listed in the menu, and it also has a little timer. The timer is not 100% accurate. It's usually a little bit short in my experience, but it's pretty close, so you should have a decent idea of how long each cut is going to take. For me, to cut a full set of 4 sticker sheets with a bunch of little kiss cut designs on them usually takes about 7 minutes. And unfortunately, these machines are pretty loud. It's not unbearable for me. I just do, a few pages here and there, but if you are expecting to churn out a lot of stickers, the noise might get to you. You might want to give the Silhouette machine its own room, or a well-lit closet, or something like that. And you probably won't want to do this in a room with someone else who's doing like delicate work where they need to be focusing, because it can be a little bit distracting. When the cutting is done, the blade will return to the starting position and be quiet, and the Silhouette Studio menu will tell you that the cut is done. And then you can use that down arrow to get the mat out of the machine. And then it's time to extract the sticker sheets from the mat. Now, if you just start pulling on them, what you'll probably end up with is some really curly sheets, especially if it's like a paper and not like a vinyl. If you have any of the Silhouette tools, like their little spatula, you can use that to start carefully separating the paper from the mat. I don't have any of the tools, and I find the most success is first just pull the waste paper off the edges, however you can do that. If this is your very first cut, go carefully around the die cuts and make sure that it has been fully separated or you'll get some tearing. And then once I have the waste paper pulled off, I will flip the mat upside down onto my clean desk. Make sure you're not putting it down onto like a pile of cat hair or something like that. And then I sort of unstick the mat from the stickers. So the stickers are kind of pressed flat against the table and the mat curls up off of the stickers. And it's a kind of a slow process. It doesn't take too long, but I want to make sure I'm not like ripping anything or making any weird bends in it by pulling too hard. And if this is your first cut and you're not sure about the settings yet, you may want to also stop removing it. If you notice some of the cuts aren't complete and you want to retry it, you can just put it back on and retry the cut with different settings. Unfortunately, if it's cut too deep, there's nothing you can do. You'll have to start over. But if you just need to make the cuts a little bit more, add a little bit of force, you should be able to reset those settings and plug it right back into the machine and give it another go. And that's it. It's a fairly long process to get things formatted in Silhouette Studio and get all the lines and the cut settings just right. But once I did all that work and I have saved my studio file, I can simply open it up and print it out and load it into the machine. I've done several more copies this way and it's pretty painless, so I'm very happy. I don't have the best experience with printers in general, and I've never used a sticker cutting machine before, so I was expecting all of this to be a lot more frustrating than it was, and it was actually pretty good. Overall, I am very pleased with the Silhouette Portrait 3. I was a little bit worried just based on some of the reviews that it would be kind of fiddly and I'd have to do a lot of tinkering to get each sheet to cut. But so far it's been pretty reliable. I can just open up my studio files that I've configured, carefully line up that sheet on the cutting mat, and it just kind of goes and it works, and I'm very happy with how it's been working so far. And for me, I'll probably, just estimating, do a couple of sticker sheets a week. That's like probably the maximum, at least right now, before I've really found, an audience. So the volume I'm not worried about. If you are expecting a greater sticker volume, for example, if you have like a social media platform with a big audience and you're expecting a lot of people to want to order these stickers, this is probably not the best option for you. I would either recommend, narrowing down your stock and ordering them from a provider in bulk, because that's going to be much easier on you, and it's probably going to be cheaper. Maybe not totally cheaper, but definitely cheaper than getting a nice printer, a nice sticker machine, maybe multiple sticker machines, and your time that you're spending sort of feeding all these sheets into the cutting machine. But there's also like industrial strength machines. Some I think even will do the print and the cut all in one, so it's even easier. But for a small shop, or if you are just a person who wants some stickers to use for yourself, this is perfectly good. So far, no complaints. But there it is, the Silhouette Portrait 3. If you have any questions that I didn't answer in this video, let me know in the comments. I'm certainly not an expert, but I will do my best to try and help. And if you want to learn more about, the business reasons, about why I'm changing my shop, why I moved away from print on demand to manufacturing stickers myself, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll get a video out for that very soon. Alright, that's all I have for now. Thank you so much. I'll be back soon with another video, and I hope to see you there. Bye bye.